You are listening to Trophy Horse with your hosts, Tricky Mick, Alex, I Yield to No One, Sid, and Ender Phoenix.
Hello, everyone. Tricky, we're good.
What?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Trophy Horse. This is episode 610, and get in, losers, because we're going hell diving. I'm your host this week, Alex, and as you might guess from that little intro, a lot of us have been playing Helldivers. I finally jumped in with everybody else. Everybody else, of course, being the guy, he always brings the awesome. It's I Yield to No One.
It's good to have more troops spreading managed democracy.
Yes, even Tricky Mick has entered the fray, at least for a game or two, from what I understand.
Well, at least he took a picture showing that he's played it. How much he's played, we don't really know.
Okay,
because
well, I know
he still may be considered a traitor to this democracy.
Well, because I know that you and Homer had commented, hey, jump in with us whenever you see us on, because you guys were playing on Friday. So I didn't know if he jumped in with you all and managed to get some time in. But yeah, apparently Tricky had a rough go of it in his first game, and he kind of just wants to wait until he can play with some of more seasoned veterans of bug and automaton murdering.
So he wants us to carry him.
Yes. We'll carry him with airstrikes and fire, which if you're looking for fire in a game like Helldivers, there's only one person you need to go to, and it's not Beavis from Beavis and Butthead. It's our friend Ender Phoenix Matt.
Let's see, flamethrowers, incendiary grenades, incendiary mines, napalm eagle strikes, napalm orbital strikes. You want fire, I got it for you.
Okay, you mentioned the mines, and I have to bring this up because some dumb asshole on one of my parties, no one we play with, it's just some random guy. We were going for extraction. The ship was coming down, the Pelican was coming down, and the motherfucker puts down a mine launcher and launches mines all over the extraction point. And of course I die, another one of our teammates dies, and then 2 other people get off the planet. And instead of having 4 people get off, why would you put down mines where we're standing? Why? I don't understand.
I've seen sillier things. I've done sillier things, but you're right. No, don't do it on the extraction point. Do it out there where all the enemies are coming from.
I'm standing right here. Now, to be fair, that is a very, that's an anomaly. That's not most people who play the game seem to be on the up and up and know what they're doing. But there are a few out there that just, I guess, panic when getting rushed by bugs or whatever, and they just fling whatever out there. But yeah, Matt, I've also bought the flamethrower, so, if you ever need a brother in fire, you need to if you want to watch the world burn, I can always help you with that.
They say, and it's kind of true, at the later levels, the flamethrower is not as great as it is the lower levels, but evidently you get a flamethrower, bro, and shit torches up real fast.
Stick to my spear for now.
I gotta be honest, I'm more of a fan of the anti-material rifle, because that thing does some damage, and I was able to buy it early on. I was able to buy it early on, so that helps you get going. Maybe that's what Tricky needs to sauce up his gameplay, but yeah.
Why don't we do trophy counts and then we can get back into because this is going to be a conversation.
I'm talking quite a bit here, and we've got some house cleaning to do before, not cleaning, but we just got some trophy updates to do before we get into all the Helldivers goodness. Tricky is a level 902 with a trophy count of 30,075 and a platinum count of 831. He somehow, by hook or by crook, probably by thievery, overtook Sid in the platinum count. I think he maybe stole some of Sid's trophies and earned himself some very undeserving platinums. Who knows? But of course, Tricky is he's healing up, so he's got plenty of time to earn platinum. So maybe he just sat down and axed to the grindstone and got it done. I am level 502 here in the good old 502 of Louisville. Total trophy count of 9,746 with a platinum count of 168 in 167 games. Yield?
Currently a level 507 with a trophy count of 10,038 and a platinum count of 183.
Matt, and I figured out, I know why you like the fire so much. It's not just your name, but there's a trophy. An achievement trophy, whatever you want to call it. You want to hyphenate them, that's fine. We'll marry them. They're basically the same thing. There's a trophy for getting 150 kills with fire in one round of Helldivers. I know that's what you're going for, sir. You don't have to hide it. You don't have to be ashamed.
I mean, I guess there's a silver lining to just using what I do.
You might as well earn virtual trophies or achievements while you're just being yourself.
Yeah. So not that it adds to my trophies, because I have been earning achievements on Steam, but I'm still level 220, 1309 for trophies and 0 platinums.
And our friend from across the pond, Sid, level 884, total trophy count of 26,537, and a platinum count of 830. Well, you know what time it is, gents. We got started out a little bit early, but this is the part of the show where we share with everybody what we've been updating everybody on what we've been doing all week. Not necessarily what you've been eating, although if you want to share that, you had some delicious peanut butter pancakes, you're always welcome to share that here. Some good Chicago-style pizza. It's always good, but really we're here to update people on our games. And I think most of the people can guess what we've all been playing the most of, but Matt, you been playing anything else besides Helldivers?
This will perk Tricky's ears right up. So I loaded Ubisoft Connect back onto my PC, and I downloaded Division 2 because I want to, maybe get back in, actually finish the story back from when I started all those years ago. And I was immediately lost by everything and what to do, so I turned that right back off. Then I also picked up Super Meat Boy Forever, which was a free game on the Epic Game Store this week, and I played a little bit of that. Played a little bit more of Marvel's Midnight Suns, and I actually took Yield's suggestion last week, and I downloaded Tomb Raider to my Steam Deck. And the problem is with that game, for some reason, the aiming is wonky. I actually have to use the trackpad to aim a lot better. If I use the right joystick, the acceleration on it is insane. I'll go from top to bottom of the screen in a microsecond. So I have to use the touchpad in the Steam Deck to precise aim. I wonder if there's a way I can get the gyroscope working on that. That way I can try to aim that way in the game. But I've made it much farther than when I started playing it back in like 2017, I think was the first time I touched it. And as a result, it's okay. I'm not totally enthralled by it yet. I immediately noticed the thing everybody complained about was that Lara was like so grief-stricken by killing the first guy that she had, but then for gameplay's sake, she just slaughters everybody else in her path. And then she talks to her mentor. It's like, oh, I killed a man. Oh, yeah, I bet that's rough. Meanwhile, she killed like 20 others on the way there. So,
and I'll tell you, it doesn't get better. She does the same thing like when she's, killing animals. You'll be almost done with the game and you'll kill an animal for meat. And she's like, ugh. I'm like, we killed like 100 of these.
Bro, I'm watching the first scene where you have to kill a deer and get its meat, and she's using an arrow to gut the deer or like cut it up. I'm like, how really efficient is that? Like, that arrow would snap in two trying to get through the deer's hide, cutting it at that level. Meanwhile, Tricky's saying how he said the same thing years ago and got killed for it. I don't know. I wasn't here for that.
Yeah, I don't know who killed him.
But yes, so that's what I've been playing besides Helldivers 2, because the servers have been up, they've been running, Arrowhead's done a lot. Maybe there was some player drop off because of other games that came out, but the end result is I've been with you guys spreading managed democracy across the stars, maybe in my own corner of the universe because I haven't been able to hook up with y'all yet, but we'll do that soon enough.
Yes, we need to do that because it would be great to have, as we talked about, Sid. Sid has the game. He's got a player banner. I've been playing the game. Yield's been playing the game. You have been playing the game, and Tricky owns it. So there's no reason for us all four not to get together. It's nice, with Homer and the Brain, like just a ton of people have the game. So it's been good to have everyone get together and just enjoy one game. Matt, any additional thoughts on Helldivers before you move on, or?
No, but I do want to say something to address Rick in the crowd, because he's saying how Troopers jumped from 124th to 40th on Netflix because of Helldivers. There is actually a Starship Troopers game very much like Helldivers. It's a wave-based game, and it's been out for a little while. So I think that's seeing some popularity too.
I saw something that pop up through social media or something. I saw an ad for it, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I did have actually Johnny Rico drop into one of my games. So I was actually hell diving with a celebrity. I was killing bugs with a celebrity because Johnny Rico was in there. So I'm not sure if it was actually Casper Van Dien. It may have been a fake. I don't know. But, I'm holding out hope that it was actually the Johnny Rico. Yield, sir, what have you been playing, and do you have any more additional thoughts on Helldivers?
Besides Helldivers 2, I've been working on some Lego 2K Drive, working towards my grind for my last few trophies. My niece was over this weekend, watched her play a lot of Horizon Zero Dawn, which made me go, I should go back and get those last couple of trophies. But that's been about it. A lot of Helldivers, a lot of Helldivers. So, no, not much to add. I've passed level 20. So I have all of the available stratagems available for me to purchase. So I'm kind of just taking my time and trying out different stuff. Me and the guys were playing Friday night, and we were laying it down pretty good. We were playing on hard. And the first one was a little rough, and then after that, we hit our stride, and we were walking out with a good 10-plus rare samples every go-round. So that was really nice. I pretty much have already upgraded all of my level 2s. So now I just need to finish a challenging level so we can start going after epics.
So I will say this ahead of time. We've been doing suicidals, and the final sample, the super sample, there's only 3 of that we've seen on the map. And every time you get them, all 3 are in the same drop spot. So you don't have to go looking for more.
Yeah, a buddy of mine, the Brain 76, sent a link that said that exact same thing, that it's always by a mushroom-looking rock. And you'll see that rock in any of the levels. But it only spawns the very rare or super rare, whatever, on Suicidal and up.
Hopefully, Hell Dive, I think, is the hardest difficulty. There's a lot of difficulties to the game, so there's like a gradient to the difficulty. And I think really, when it comes to difficulty, I mean, sure, upping it will provide more challenge, but really the mission type, depending on what the mission is really where the difficulty comes into play. Because some missions that I've played are easier than others. Like killing 150 bugs is definitely one of the easier missions, even on like hard difficulty.
Yeah, those have generally been a lot easier, but I'll tell you, it at Suicidal, like killing bots, quickest way to earn medals and money, because you're in and out in less than 10 minutes. But on those maps where you have to go running, Suicidal is just stupid. And we completed a mission today, and we did the mains, and we were just getting ready to extract, and we had super samples, we had rare samples, we had all the things done, and some sort of game-breaking bug hit us, where every time we walked into the extraction zone, we all just died. And it would say your teammate killed you, it would say you died by explosion, whatever it was literally a game bug, and we couldn't finish the mission via extraction. Now, that just means we didn't get the samples or rewards from extraction, but we still completed the mission. Yeah. It was just disheartening to do all that work and not come away with the 3 super samples.
There have been some weird things that happen in games that I've played. It's only a few games, but I haven't gotten the trophy for playing 50 missions yet, so I'm still, relatively new as far as things go. There was a mission where I couldn't switch weapons. I was stuck with like my anti-material rifle, and I couldn't switch back to the primary weapon. There was also another mission where, the one where you have to shoot the ICBM.
Yep.
You have to unlock all the things manually, and then so we unlocked everything, but it still said one of the hatches or whatever was down, and we basically couldn't complete that part of the mission, even though we had plenty of time. And so it essentially counted as still got experience and stuff like that and money, but it still counted as a failure. So a very kind of weird things have happened like that. But overall, the game has been a lot of fun to play. My first night was really frustrating because I couldn't get into a game, as everybody had experienced for a while. And I told Yield in chat that basically the game is if the game is online and it takes forever to get in, or you can't get in on a night, you can't play reliably. To me, the game's unplayable because it's an online-based game. People are paying to play this game, and you're requiring online. So I think that unsteady online or not being able to, or having to wait hours and hours or days to play is unplayable. Whether you can get in and play a little bit here and there, or once you get in, if the game is playable, still, if the internet's crapping out because of their servers, I do consider that unplayable, especially if it's widespread, which it was. Now, of course, Matt had mentioned they've upped the server count. I think there's like 70,000 or 700,000 space now on the servers, so they've not quite doubled
now.
Okay, they've basically doubled the servers, which, ever since that first night, I've been able to get on every night and play. And, the game has been, like I said, a ton of fun. So they seem to have smoothed a lot out. And I think that Sony realizes that, hey, this game's going to have to carry our players for a while since we're not releasing anything, probably during the summertime. So we should probably help Arrowhead out and get these problems ironed out. And then I wanted to ask you guys a couple questions. First, Yield, have you beaten a Bile Titan yet?
No, we haven't gone after one yet. I think that's going to be my... So there are two things I think I'm gunning for next Friday night with the guys. One, I think we're going to go after a Bile Titan. And two, there's a trophy for... I see that you have this, Alex. There's a trophy for extracting on a hard difficulty. All 4 guys extracting on a hard difficulty. We were nailing down, like I said, challenging pretty good. So I thought about maybe trying to see if we could get the guys to do a hard and try to get that trophy. So, and I've already got the one on hard for just doing, only using your sidearm. So...
Yeah, and I think that doing if you could do the mission kill 150 bugs and then extract, and if you can do that on hard, that should be easy enough for I played quite a few hard missions, but on my first one I got the I can't exactly remember what the name of the trophy is, but I know which one you're talking about because I do have it. Yes, and I got it on my first mission, so it's not honestly that hard to get. But the one about killing bugs and having that on hard is probably, since it's a shorter mission. Is probably your best bet there. I did also want to ask, so I'm still a cadet. I'm level 11, and I've seen people lower level than me have a space cadet and stuff like that. How do you change does your rank change as you go up? I know Yield has Super Citizen. Okay.
You go into your, where the computer system where you go in and you can change your sidearm, your grenades, your primary and all that, and you can change your armor color and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So you go there, one of the options, you can change your tag from cadet to super citizen if you have the super citizen edition, to chief when you're that high of a level, yada, yada, yada. You can change your rank name.
Okay. I didn't know. I just assumed, I guess, that a lot of games
changed it.
Yeah. And I'm like, no. What the fuck, man?
No. You have to go in and change it yourself.
Still a cadet, I'd probably look like a new bitch or something like that. People don't respect me properly.
You want to talk about no respect? So I jumped into a public game one night just for shits and giggles. And I jump into a game and I was level 20 and it was, I think, a level 3 and a level 5 that I jumped into. And as a result, I was trying to get my mic operating because mostly I keep my mic off and I don't remember what the push to talk button was in game. So we're playing. I'm trying to help them out, and they're just fucking shit up left and right, and they get a bug breach. And we're getting swarmed, and we kill it. And I finally got my mic situation set up, and I just said, and that's why bug breaches are bad. And one of the little shits turns around, and these were, older guys. These weren't young kids. And there's one of them said, "Oh, that's why your mom's bad." I'm like, okay, good luck. Thinking on that now, I should have just thrown a minefield in front of them and let them have fun and then leave. But it's like, I'm trying to help you guys out, and you're acting like little shits. Okay.
Yeah, speaking of little shits in the chat, Tricky Mick is calling me a bitch. I will remind everyone that Tricky played one game of Helldivers, died a lot, and then ran away from the game screaming and crying, waiting for his big old brothers to come and save him.
And then posted a picture of like everybody with Helldivers except for Matt, because Matt plays on PC, and tries to, and talking smack. So he's the last place guy that talks the most smack when he needs the three amigos of Helldivers to come save him.
Yeah, exactly. And to be, Matt, I'm honestly, I know, like I said, most people seem pretty serious about playing the game. I've only had like one game, aside from the games that I played with Yield and Jones and Riley. That's the brain. He's been a host on there. We've used the name interchangeably, but we don't want people to get confused. There's only been one other game besides the game with those guys. There people have used chat. Everyone else has been silent, and I mean it's been fine. But obviously the best way to play this game is with friends and chatting and like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Hey, this is watch out. There's bugs coming from this way. So, hey,
what direction are you going? I'm over here. So. That way, when all heck breaks loose and you start throwing in eagle strikes and everything, you kind of know where to look. Or you see your friend getting too close, hey, back up. You might get fried.
Oh, yeah, because go ahead, Matt.
No, I'm just going to say, at the higher levels, communication is extremely important.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if you're going into a bug nest, especially the big bug nest, and you're going to run in there when I have eagle strikes, you're probably going to get hit with an eagle strike because I'm going to eagle strike the shit out of that before I even set foot inside that bug nest. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? So I have no remorse for that. I mean, some people just don't seem to understand. Like, they'll have time to run away, and they just, I guess, choose to stay in the path of the inferno, and I've never understood that. But use those stratagem, kids. I will also ask, Matt, since you've played more on the higher levels than we have, is it the cooldown rate for the stratagems that's longer on higher levels, correct? Or like the drop from the orbit seems to be longer?
Something I actually don't recall. I'm so focused on what's happening around me. I tend not to look at the timers. As far as what I've noticed, it doesn't feel like it's longer because we're calling in eagle strikes and orbitals all the time because they are very necessary on it. But remember, there's also ship improvements that help reduce the timers on a lot of those.
Yes.
Yeah, but those require samples, and those are harder to get than the money you get for buying stratagems.
Correct.
Yeah. I will also give a trophy tip for people out there. Caught by supplies. It's kill a charger, which are, some big armored bugs. Tough sons of bitches to kill, but kill one of those with a resupply pod. I surprisingly threw one of those stratagems, the beacon, from like a football field away from this thing and got it stuck on its leg, and it dropped right on and killed it, and that's how I got the trophy. So if you're looking to get that trophy, try attaching it to the leg of the creature, because there was, I don't know, or like maybe the butt where it's vulnerable, the back side where you can shoot it. I don't know what it was, but I was actually able to attach it to the creature itself and able to get an easy kill that way.
We've gotten it to land on its head or on top of it before. So I think if you can, just get it to bounce right, it'll hop on them. I got lucky with mine, so to speak. There was a night where they let you use the orbital EMS strike for free, because they do that every once in a while. They'll give you one of the stratagems, and here, this is what you can use tonight. So I tried to drop that on one. I was up on a rock enclave, and I missed, or he ran out of it before it really got him. And he walked right up to almost right to where I was, and then just stopped and was staring at me. And I'm like, well, if you're just going to stand there, I'm going to get a cheap trophy. And I just like resupply drop right out in front of me, and you're dead. So not as dramatic as everybody else's, but I'll take it.
I will say this, is that now that they seem to have gotten through some of the server-related issues, the CEO put out the tweet stating that now they can finally move on to fixes, improvements, new stuff down the line. There were some hints of things that are coming down, things that were in Helldivers 1 that weren't necessarily in, that definitely weren't in the launch of Helldivers 2. And to answer Redbeard Rick's comment about, so Leroy Jenkins would love this game. Yes, indeed,
yes.
he would.
Yes, indeed, he would.
Helldivers Assemble.
I ain't gonna lie, I've done that occasionally, and then have turned around and ran away.
See, that's odd because the one it's only one night, but the one time I played with Yield, he was very much like crouch down, plan, take a good minute or two to sit there and point out, scope out like the next lookout point to draw attention to. So the Yield I played with definitely did not do that.
No, but I have had my moments where I'm just like, F it, Leroy Jenkins, and gone running in there and then been like, oh crap, I didn't see that charger.
Well, you definitely never see the second charger, like you never see the second velociraptor in the grass to the side.
And of course, there's nothing more fun than tagging a charger with an orbital and he starts walking it towards you.
That sucks.
I got him. Oh no.
So for the longest time we were using the orbital laser.
Yes, those are extremely good, especially for Bile Titans.
Because it tracks the biggest guy, and then when he's dead, it goes after all the little ones. Or I've used it for, I've had a whole swarm, like a bug breach, and I got a whole swarm of medium to littles coming at me, and I'm like, screw it here. Out goes the orbital, it'll wipe them all out, I save my ammo. But then we've also switched over to the orbital rail cannon strike.
I got that today.
And granted, it's only one shot, but he's out of the way.
I've been using it for the automaton tanks because those things suck.
Well, to get behind them to kill them suck. Have you run across I call them ion cannons, but they're not. They remind me of ion cannons from Star Wars. Have you run across those yet? I'm sure you have. Those
probably
cannons at the fort that will track people and light you up if you get too close. Those are a biatch. Those are worse than the tank. Because it's hard to get close to it. But anyway, so I was going to say, the charger, did you guys know, the Brain also shared this video with us. If you can get it, if you can shoot it with either your recoilless rifle, the EAT 17, or you can, I think it's 2 shots with the rail cannon gun. Shoot it in a leg. It'll blow the armor off of it. And then you can switch to your small arm fire and kill it in like no time.
Yes, I've known that removing the leg armor and then hitting the leg will put it down real quick. I just hadn't had access to things that could do that.
Gotcha. But anyway, that's another tip out there to get rid of the chargers if you don't have any of the big orbital stuff that'll do it. Eagle strikes will do it. Cluster bombs will do it, but it takes more than one. Eagle strike will do it, but he can't walk out of it. He's got to get hit by all of them. Rocket pod will do it. But again, if he's not in the middle of it, it'll just hurt him.
Well, and also besides just strike runs where it's kind of like a line across the battlefield, there are certain drops that will basically be just a giant bomb localized and very dense in one area. So if you're using that one, chances are if it's anywhere near it, it's going to get
he's toast.
It just needs to get it by one, and it's done. So
yeah.
All right. Well, so Helldivers, it's a lot of fun. They've fixed the server issues, it seems. So if you've been waiting on jumping in, now would be a good time. We're all still playing. I'm pretty much playing every day, so I'm hopefully going to have some time to get off here and play it tonight. I'll say that. Before we move on, I did get a platinum trophy this past week. I got the platinum trophy for Plague Tale Requiem, and I've said enough about that game. All I'll say is give it a try. Maybe it's not your cup of tea, maybe it is, but it's worth trying out just to see how you like it. So yeah, platinum trophy. I don't remember, 1 million. Is that how many platinum trophies I have now? Oh, 168.
That sounds good.
Yeah, 167. Did we update the trophies?
I did.
Okay. I had hoped. For some reason, I thought I had more than 168, but I trust in your honesty, so I trust that you updated them, and I just was giving myself more than I deserved. Well, it's finally happened, folks, or it's happened, and didn't really take a whole lot of time for it to happen. But Sony's PlayStation Portable has been hacked to run emulated PSP games. This article comes from Tom Warren at The Verge. Once again, thank you to Matt for his Cliff's Notes, his paraphrasing of the article and the quotes. Sony's new PS Portal has been hacked by Google engineers to run emulated games locally. They were able to get the PPSSPP emulator running natively. They confirmed the exploit is all software-based, so it doesn't require any hardware modifications, which is nice because for those people like me who really are too afraid to open up their expensive electronics, it's kind of nice that it's just software-based. So, Matt, do you think it annoys Sony that professionals like Google engineers are the ones doing this, or does it actually, it benefits Sony because now that you can run emulated software on there from the PSP, does it make it more attractive of an option for people to buy and actually help Sony sales?
I don't think so, because when we cover this in the Trophy Wars Facebook page, a lot of people were talking that it, with little memory, no memory to actually put stuff on there, and there's better, cheaper options to do these things. This is just Google engineers being Google engineers. They're having fun with it, and it's kind of like the idea of, can you get Doom or Skyrim to run on a toaster? And people are doing it just because they want to try the challenge. So it's interesting that it's done. There's a ton more options that work better than the PS Portal, especially things that are a little bit more ergonomic.
And Yield, what do you think about this? Was it just a matter of time before people got PSP games on there? And, at any point, do you think we'll see Vita games on there too? I assume this does not encompass Vita games.
I'm not surprised. That's kind of the thing now. When some new tech comes out, it was, well, how can we hack it to put what we want to put on it?
And obviously, this is a good thing for people like Daryl, because Daryl was a big proponent of the Portal, and he loved the PSP as well. So it's just extra icing on the cake for someone like Daryl, who was an early adopter for the, the console or the Portal, I guess I should say. And they get, potentially, if he wants to deal with it, get the software in there to be able to play old PSP games on there. So obviously, a good thing for the people who bought it, but I guess as Matt said, maybe not something that actually encourages people to buy it because there may be better options out there. Matt, do you mind sharing what better options are there are out there? Are they
legally
PC based? No. Okay. All right.
Listen, Google is your friend here, and more than just for what they've done in hacking the PS Portal.
I doubt Sony listens to this, but I totally understand, Matt.
Y'all can message me privately if you want to talk game preservation.
Well, we all love game preservation, but I guess we need to talk on in more legal terms here on the airways. We don't have a trophy horse lawyer, so before we get one, we probably want to skate a little more carefully on the thin ice. And speaking of thin ice, it seems like Bungie is kind of on thin ice here with Sony. This article comes from Andy Chalk at PC Gamer. Sony isn't happy with Bungie. The PlayStation boss wants more accountability from the studio on money and deadlines. In a recent Q&A with analysts following Sony's recent financial report, Chairman Hiroki Totoki praised the creativity of Bungie, but also reportedly stated wanting more accountability for development budgets and schedules. This comes after reports of Destiny 2 players declining while revenues were shown to be 45% below projections. Quote, I visited the Bungie studios and had meetings with the management, and I saw the employees working at the studios were highly motivated, showing great creativity as well as an impressive knowledge of live service, he said. However, I also felt that there was room for improvement from a business perspective with regard to areas such as the use of business expenses and assuming accountability for development timeline. I hope to continue the dialogue and come up with some good solutions. So, Mr. Shitoki, been really big on obviously focusing on the financials here, talking about, margins and stuff coming out of the most recent Sony financials, and here talking about Bungie, how could there be more accountability? And obviously this may be one of those things that Bungie tried to avoid for the longest time, having accountability towards someone above them. But obviously if you're Sony and you spend that much money to buy them, to the tune of $4 billion, if there's a drop in the money coming in, or at least what is projected, then you definitely want to know why. But it also could be because Destiny's an older game. Not every game lives forever. And Destiny's had a long life, so maybe it's just kind of one of those things where as new games come out now, Destiny's just not going to be as profitable. I also find it funny that Sony spent all this money on Bungie when they might have just been better off buying Arrowhead after Arrowhead's success with Helldivers, which I still expect fully that Sony's going to make a run to buy Arrowhead. But maybe that's just me. But again, Sony's strategy has not been the big sexy buy. It's not been like Microsoft where you buy Bethesda or Activision. They're going after smaller studios, startups, new companies, and obviously lesser known studios like Arrowhead, but ones they have faith and believe in. So after the success of Helldivers, we'll just have to watch. But yeah, Helldivers came in kind of out of nowhere, the success of the sequel, and then Bungie with Destiny 2, which has been a very successful game, just kind of dying off, and just hearing all these stories about a little bit of turmoil there, them worrying about Sony going to be, taken over, or, Bungie having less influence over Bungie, and then Sony wanting more accountability for them. I don't know, Matt. What do you think of this news with Bungie? Because it doesn't seem to be really all that positive when it comes to news from Bungie these days. Do you think Sony has remorse for buying them? Matt, are you muted?
Hey, look at that. My microphone was muted because I was typing.
This is like a weekly tradition. Like, Matt starts just riffing off. He's like, pulling the lawnmower cord. He's going to go to town and mow some lawns. And it's like, Matt?
Well, yeah. Here's the thing. I'm trying to interact with the chat, and I don't want my clacky keyboard in the background giving you all edit issues. So if it means you have to call me out for being muted, so be it. To answer your question, Sony is feeling the pressure of spending billions on Destiny, and maybe they're not getting the return on investment that they were hoping for. When they initially bought Bungie, they were always talking about, what would they actually be getting Bungie for? A 8-year-old product? Sony, what are you doing? Well, then maybe they were getting them for the expertise on live service gaming, as well as, first-person shooters, and maybe reinvigorating some FPSs on the system. But it's after the latest issues with Bungie getting out their DLC and problems with Destiny 2 and things like that, it's starting to draw attention, and especially with Sony's recent takes on what they're doing, that multiple live service games were cut, that they're kind of depending on Bungie to lead that cause. But like you said, now you kind of have Arrowhead stepping in here, going like, oh, well, we had 7,000 peak players playing Helldivers 1. We should be okay. And then you have over 700,000 people trying to play the game at the same time. I think you're right. I think Sony's going to be eyeing Arrowhead quite closely after this. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have a purchase announcement sometime in the near future.
And Yield, what do you think about, do you think Sony kind of maybe, as Matt said, you think they're buying them for the expertise, and you would kind of expect after 8 years that Bungie would be kind of winding down on Destiny and be moving on to other projects. We know they're doing Marathon, but that's going to be multi-platform. But at some point, Sony had to expect that Destiny 2 was going to, not be a thing anymore, right? Or was at least going to drop in sales or player base.
Well, you would think. As old as the game is, and with the fact that everybody else is, there are more and more live service games, as those come out, your player base will kind of dwindle. So unless you can keep things fresh with your game, it's, you need to come out with something else. And I don't know. But Bungie just kind of hasn't done it. That was kind of the surprise thing for me when they bought Bungie.
No, I mean, I think you definitely hit on a point there, is that, for that game to be out as long as it has, and Destiny to be pulling the player base it has, and making the money it has, it's games like, not many games stick around that long. So their live service shooter has been incredibly successful, and I think that needs to be stated. Their problems aside, there was a reason that Sony was drawn to buy Bungie, and it was because of the success of Destiny. But again, new games come out, people move on, and not everything lasts forever. I mean, at some point, Rocket League's probably not going to be a thing. That just kind of happens. Some games fall off sooner, other games have a longer tail. But for those games that have a longer tail, that's kind of outliers. That's not really what happens. People move from game to game pretty quickly. So, I mean, I think Bungie definitely deserves credit for how much they've supported Destiny 2 and, how successful the game has been. But maybe it's a sign with the drop in player base. I mean, there could just be time to move on, And I don't know exactly if they're planning to move on or when their last expansion was. I haven't necessarily seen news about that. But with them working on Marathon, you'd have to assume that they're at some point in the near future going to move on from Destiny and make just a brand new game.
So from chat, Saber jumps in and says Bungie is a one-trick pony, that every now and again the clock hits that one trick, and trust me, they need to go in a different direction. They were the stable for live service games. Well, people have worn tired of it. Now you need to find a new thing. Maybe you bring back Oni? I vaguely remember a game called Oni.
So wait, basically, Saber, give us a little bit of clarification there. Are you saying step away from the third-person shooters? Is that what or the first person? Because Halo obviously was first person, but are you just saying step away from the shooters? We'll wait for Saber on that, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that, clearly, but when Sony was going to buy Bungie, they clearly talked everything out. But if Sony's wondering why the game is dropping in, its profitability, well, again, it's an older game, and you probably, instead of buying, they should not have bought Bungie for Destiny. They should have bought Bungie for their talent and know-how. That's kind of, yeah, getting a game library is valuable, but, Microsoft owns Halo, so, how much of a game library does Bungie actually have? It's pretty much Destiny and I guess Marathon as well. But you need the people, especially if you're jumping into live service. Bungie was not necessarily a bad purchase. It was a good purchase, but you kind of just have to have an understanding of this is why we need to buy them, and it's not necessarily for this thing. But Destiny that's been making money for 7-8 years now.
Everybody wave at Tricky in chat.
I choose to wave goodbye to that topic and move on to the next topic, which is more Sony goodness, or, I guess goodness depending on how you look at it. PSVR 2 for the 10 people that own PSVR 2 to add PC support in 2024. This comes from Gematsu and Sal Romano. In a recent PlayStation blog, SIE Content Communications Manager Gillen McAllister stated the company is testing the ability to allow owners of the headset to access additional games on the PC in 2024. No further details were announced. So, good. Again, Sony becoming more intertwined with the PC. They're putting more games on they're putting more of their game library on PC. They're talking about being more aggressive with that. Hiroshi Totoki was talking about that within the last month. You got, a game like Helldivers launching day and date with PC and PlayStation. And, and now PSVR 2 is going to have PC support. So, Sony really, it seems like, they're still going to do live service, but maybe they'd cool down on live service and you know what? PC is a proven commodity, and we need to go more heavily into that because we can probably do that better than we can do live service, obviously, with the delays and cuts they've had to do. Yield. What do you think that the foray into PC is a good idea for Sony? Do you think that they have done a good job of kind of switching tracks? They may still do live service, but it seems like I said, they're kind of going less in live service, cooling off on that and getting hotter on PC. Do you think that's a good bet?
I'm sure it will for those who don't own a 5 or prefer not to stream from the 5, because I'm sure if you're playing on PC, it's just a lot easier to stream from the PC than it is to go through the PC. It's nice to see that they're going to add PC support for the PSVR 2, because I'm sure that it'll help its life cycle a little bit. So, I mean, I'm glad to see that for that aspect and those who invested the money into it.
Yeah, let me ask you, because how much of this, I mean, I think that Sony and SIE and Totoki, they kind of had this in their head that they were going to go more aggressively after PC. After seeing, some successful launches, people on PC buying into the PlayStation games, despite some of those games having kind of terrible launches. But the success of Helldivers, and where most of the people playing Helldivers are playing on PC, how much do you think that factored in, or at least has fueled their desire to become more intertwined in PC? Obviously, if they're adding, PSV or PC support to PSVR 2, this was kind of planned. But do you think that Helldivers has helped dump more gasoline on that fire?
Well, I'm sure it will. I mean, as much as popular as Helldivers is right now, and how it already beat God of War, and how Sony has a hard-on for God of War. So, this is just going to reinforce their mentality of, well, we need to have our games either launching day and date or launch quicker on PC. So, absolutely.
And Matt, you're a PC player. You also have VR, which Yield and I do not have. So you're the best person to probably speak on this, but how kind of integral can PSVR 2 and PC, how integral can that relationship be between the PC user base and just the PSVR tech?
It's going to be extremely integral. And Rick in chat says it opens it up to millions more people. Don't know why you'd buy a PSVR 2 if you have access to other peripherals, though. So here's the thing. The PSVR 2 is actually really good hardware. And for the price you're paying, it was being locked into a system with very little software support. Opening it up to PC gives PC players a new powerful headset that you'll be able to take advantage of. And what do I mean by that? The PSVR 2 actually has eye tracking built in, something the Quest 3 does not. And that's your most comparable price point when it comes to VR headsets that are in on PC. Now, you have all these other devices out there. You have your Vives, you have your Apple Pros, which are $3,500 for some ungodly reason. But the technology and the screens in the PSVR 2 headset are easily found in headsets, close to $900, $1,000. But you can go out there and get a PSVR 2 headset for less than $700. So having that kind of headset available to play games on the PC market actually gives it a very good marketability, because the Quest 3, as good as it is, doesn't have some of those things the PSVR 2 does have. So that's kind of where I think they have a chance at the market. And certainly, I'm kind of hoping that opens it up to allow games like Horizon Call of the Mountain and other PSVR 2 exclusives to potentially come to PC, if Totoki is serious about opening up the platform and leveraging the PC audience to games that have been on PlayStation. So I'm actually kind of hoping that they make good on this.
And, intertwining PC with PSVR 2 may be what the PSVR 2 needs, because I've said it all along. We have no updates recently on the sales of the PSVR 2, which to me says that it's not selling well. I think that they gave one update after it launched, and we haven't. It's been silenced ever since. And to me, if you have a successful thing that's selling really well, how often do they trumpet the sales of the PS5? All the time. So if you have something that you're not talking about the sales about, and that's not just Sony, that's any company, probably is a bad indication of what you're selling. So the PC market might be exactly what the VR2 needs. And like the thing that Matt said that really caught my attention was that he talked about how good of hardware it is. And I think Sony's problem hasn't been putting out bad hardware. The Vita, the PSP, the Move controller, maybe. I never used it, and it wasn't. Huh?
Womp womp.
Well, was it? Well, maybe that's the one exception, or maybe it was good quality still. But the problem with all of this stuff is support. Sony wants to do all these things, but then they don't adequately support it with enough software. It's like, if Sony just focused on their core and maybe doing a few other side projects, maybe, putting, like going more to PC, or not, focus on the home console and not necessarily worry about, VR or these other things, they might be better off. But they always want to do these different, sidekick peripherals, and they never support them. So the quality was never an issue with the PSP or the Vita or any of these things. It was just the support. So it just kind of seems to be the case again here with the VR2. Now you would hope that the VR2, Sony can pull out of this and they can continue in the market, or, there's a PS VR 3 and they just keep going, because obviously VR does have a market. But again, we keep coming back to this thing of not quality, but just an issue of support.
So before we move on, there's a couple things from chat on this subject. First off, Red Bear Rick says he's sick of your vendetta against PSVR. Rick, I'm sorry, but exactly what Alex said is that Sony puts out these things without any sort of game plan. And usually their game plan is make up money by having proprietary memory cards, make up money by having, 2 or 3 pieces of software that make it a killer app, and then don't support it for years to come. The thing about it is, and Rick also asks, is will you be able to play PC games on it, though, or just PSVR? The assumption is that they're opening up to be able to play PC VR games, because otherwise they would have to put their PSVR games on PC. And if they're doing that, it's honestly not worth the effort for them. So I think that there's a greater chance than not that you're going to see PC VR games playable on PSVR 2. And then Saber says it's kind of like when Sega put out the CD-ROM, then they put out the 32X, and then Sega Saturn. Well, you just released the VR, then PlayStation 4 Pro, then PS5, then VR 2 again. People are not made out of money, and you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people who opt not to get these incremental upgrades because it's like, I can't afford that. And we have an article later. Next, exactly what we want to talk about is about the PS5 Pro. So, Alex, you want to take it from there?
Sure thing. Although I do want to address, Rick said that I have a hatred for VR. When have I ever hated VR? Like I said, it wasn't for me, which is the same thing Yield said. And I said I don't think the sales are that great because they're not reporting on it. But when have I actually ever hated on it? Did anyone, like, are there any examples of that? I don't know where that comment came from. Is it just because
I think he's mistaking you for me, because I definitely have said and hated on PSVR in the past.
Okay, I was just confused there. It's like I'm honest about it and I give you my opinion, but I don't think I've ever been like, yo, fuck VR2 and all this. But you've also, Matt, have had VR, so I wouldn't assume it was you because you actually like VR, whereas me and you are like, the two crotchety old men where we like our home consoles and that's about it. Like, we don't stray further from that.
I think chat is exposing you, Alex, because Neptune Princess comes in and says, you tell me you hate it all the time, but you told me not to tell anyone.
No, that's just her trying to push me under the bus. Yeah, that's just Ashley trying to push me under the bus for some strange reason. I don't know. I'm sure Tricky called her up and told her he would send her $50 if she got on there and kicked up some dust in the chat. But no, I don't hate VR. It's just not for me. And I just, if it's going to be out there, I would just like some sales updates to just know a better position for what's going on. But when things are not really, there's not transparency, I can only assume certain things. But we continuing the Sony train, and while we don't necessarily have this doesn't come, it's not official. Sony hasn't said anything official, or so it's basically just kind of guesstimating at this point. But a PS5 Pro likely out later in 2024, analysts say. This comes from IGN and Wesley Yin Poole. Analysts have told CNBC that Sony is likely to release a PS5 Pro later in the year. In the past, Sony released the PS4 Pro 3 years after the launch of the system, so there is some historical accuracy to the projection. Now, of course, we talked about last week how they thought that I can't remember who it was in Sony, but it's a Sony rep said that the console was entering the second half of its life cycle, or the later stage of its life cycle. So that would kind of suggest that it would have a shorter life cycle than, say, the PS4, the PS3. Typically we had kind of gone to expect a 10-year life cycle for these things, but maybe the PS5 would have a shorter one. But, the PS5 Pro, something coming out later this year, potentially. Analysts say that. Again, it's not Sony saying, it's analysts, so it's just kind of rumored at this point. But obviously analysts have educated guess, and there is a little bit of history with Sony releasing the PS4 Pro a certain amount of time after its launch. That would certainly, after the fall or the projections falling short for the PlayStation 5 sales, a PS5 Pro would certainly, help boost sales quite a bit, and would suggest that the PlayStation 5 does have more life into it in its life cycle than maybe we might think. Maybe it's not going to go 6 years. Maybe it'll be 7, 8, 9. I've always thought that with how rough the launch was for the PS5, that as good as the tech was, Sony would try to elongate this life cycle as much as they could to take advantage of the hardware and, its developers and software engineers getting the most out of the tech that they could. So I think that if a PS5 Pro does launch at the end of this year, especially, it would be smart to have it towards the holidays, because then you get all the holiday sales. Would kind of suggest that, don't count the PS5 out just quite yet. Yield, what do you think? Do you believe that we'll see a PS5 Pro in your heart of hearts? And do you think that it would help Sony in the sales area? Do you think there'd be enough people going out there to buy it? Like, Tricky would. We know Tricky would definitely go out and buy it.
Yeah,
do you think
Tricky will buy one even if he never opens it. He'll just buy it and tout that, look, I have a PS5 Pro. It wouldn't shock me. That's just kind of what Sony's done over the last 2 generation cycles, is that they come out with either a slimmer version, or they come out with one that can pack a little bit more punch. And it's not my cup of tea. I mean, unless mine were to die, then maybe I would consider, but it just seems to be Sony's MO.
Yeah, I mean, I still have my original PS4. I never bought a PS4 Pro, so I'm with you, Yield Net. Unless something happens to my console, I'll just stick with the one I got. But we do see these mid-cycle refreshes for a lot of the console makers. The Switch, the LCD version of the Switch came out. So you had, a Switch essentially with a better screen come out, after the original launch of that. Or the original launch of the standard model of that console. And, so it would seem that it's not just something that Sony does. Every single company, including Xbox, it gets to be a certain point in the life cycle. And, after being able to mess with the tech after a certain amount of time, you just find more efficient ways to make the console, to produce it, to find, not cheaper materials, but you basically reduce the cost of making a console. And so you release that, boost sales a little bit, reignite some of the excitement around buying that console, and just better profit margins overall. Matt, what do you think of the story in general? Do you see much behind it? Because I get that we've always come to expect a mid-cycle refresh, because it seems to happen, going back to the PS5. Well, actually to the PS2, because it happened. They released a smaller version of the PS2, so even before the PS3. We've come to expect it, but it doesn't always mean it's going to be the case.
Well, remember, we got mid-cycle refreshes anyways, going back to the PS1, and back on the PS2 and PS1, it was just the slim models. There wasn't necessarily any improvements. On the PS3, we got slim models, and then they actually removed features because the original fat PS3, I forget which one. I think it was the 80 gigabyte that was able to play PS
60 gigabyte.
Well, no, because we had a 20 gigabyte and an 80 gigabyte, and I think
it's 60.
No, because the 60 came out and that didn't have the capability to play the PS2 games. All of the PS3s could play PS1 games, but only one original version of the PS3 was able to play PS2 games. So they took away that capability when they did their mid-cycle refresh. PS4 gave us the PS4 Pro, which played PS4 games better, faster, higher frame rates. So all's that to say, yes, we are going to get a PS5 Pro at some point. I don't know what they can give us other than play PS5 games better than what they play now. Because as I stated on last week's show, it's going to be a point where we have to choose currently on PS5 between high frame rates or ray tracing, or high frame rates and 4K. And on these advanced systems, that shouldn't be a thing you're forced to choose between. So hopefully on a PS5 Pro, we get them being able to do both at the same time. That's my hope for the system. Will I buy it? Probably not for a number of years down the line.
Okay, and before we move on, I do want to clear up one thing, because I had a 60 gigabyte PS3 and I played my old WB PS2 games on it. This does come from Amazon.com. The backwards compatible PlayStation 3 60 gigabyte is backward compatible with most PlayStation and PlayStation 2 games, which means you'll be able to play your favorites without keeping the old systems. And the 60 gigabyte was released on November 17th, 2006, so I think the 80 gigabyte came out later.
I don't know. I know after a while I just upgraded. I put a 200 gig hard drive in my PS3 because I was tired of the running out of space. But the point there was that they gave us a mid-cycle refresh that removed the capability that the system previously had.
Yeah, and well, I think that with Sony not being as focused on backwards compatibility, basically telling people like, hey, digitally you can, be backwards compatible with a lot of stuff and some of your disk-based stuff, but Sony, Microsoft going the other direction and trying to focus more on backwards compatibility. Sony's just kind of like, you guys think you use it more than you actually do, so we're just kind of going to take the hit and not worry about backwards compatibility as much as our competition. Although again, Microsoft, trying to seemingly eliminate physical disk, their love affair with backwards compatibility may be short-lived. But yeah, gentlemen, anything else to add here as far as the PS5 Pro goes? Matt, would you buy a PS5 Pro?
Probably way down the line. I didn't buy a PS4 Pro when it launched. I waited a while.
And I guess it will all come down to the if there were added functionality to it, if it made it a better system. Did you guys buy the switch, the LCD switch?
The OLED
the LED. Sorry, excuse me.
OLED. Remember
OLED,
that's a huge important because LEDs are good, but OLEDs are the best. No, and the sole reason is because I have a Monster Hunter Rise Collector's Edition Switch. If I didn't have that, when Tears of the Kingdom came out, they released their OLED Switch. I would have had that in a heartbeat.
Well, you guys can only support so much in the Grinelli household, and you guys are gaming on a lot, so I totally understand that. But saving up that money for the Switch.
Why didn't I get V1?
Well, if you got V1, you'd be getting yourself one too. So you're just saving up money for that the Switch 2, the ultimate upgrade.
Well, we know that's a day one purchase in this household.
Yes, and a day one purchase just like Helldivers was for our friend Yield, doing extremely well, much better than another game released by Warner Brothers, Suicide Squad. This article comes from IGN and Wesley Yin Poole. And by the way, Tricky made this agenda, so it's not just us shitting on Suicide Squad some more. Tricky chose to put this in here. So, Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League has fallen short of our expectations, according to Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers recently announced how their new game Suicide Squad has fallen short of expectations. Warner Brothers CFO Gunnar Weidenfels admitted the game hadn't done the business for the company that it had hoped. No sales figures were mentioned because they did say that the failure had set up the company's game business for a tough year-on-year comparison. On Steam, more players playing Helldivers than Suicide Squad.
Important thing there, Alex. More players playing Helldivers 1 than Suicide Squad.
Yeah, apparently I'm dropping numbers and letters off of things here. OLED instead of LED, Helldivers instead of Helldivers 1. Reading is fundamental, kids. But yeah, so look, I don't wish this game ill, just like I don't want to wish ill to Skull and Bones. I hope every game is successful because I know there are people out there that enjoy playing these games, and there are people that pour tons of effort into making these games. So I want every game to be successful for the sake of the community and for the sake of the developers. But this was a game that had a very negative outlook to it from players for a very long time now. And I don't necessarily... The live service elements of it didn't help, but the fact that now you have Warner Brothers coming out and saying that it's fallen short of expectations, like... I don't really necessarily know... That's definitely not a good sign for the game or from Rocksteady. And I can't remember who pointed it out. I think maybe it was T. Diddy. But I think that, Rocksteady being a former shell of the people who made Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, someone pointed out that a lot of the people that worked there at that time, or the leadership, is gone now. This game just hasn't really had a lot of positive press to it, regardless of whether Sony showed it off a state of play to give it some limelight. It's just been kind of one of those games where some people have been excited, but the majority of us have just kind of written it off. Matt, I don't know. What is your outlook for this game? Obviously, things are not good. Do you think they can turn it around, or is this a sign that this game's life cycle is going to be extremely short?
Having not played it myself, I can't speak definitively to how good the game plays or feels or whatnot. We'll leave that to Tricky when he comes back. And he's been talking to us in chat saying he enjoys it, that he wishes he could talk to be able to defend it. And I'll say this. There's people been complaining about it since day one because it looked like a quick cash grab to be able to just cash in on the Arkham name. And after that, it was filled with microtransactions. And now people are complaining the story. And now that it's out, people are actually playing through and saying, well, I don't like the way they did this. I don't like the way they did that. Listen, you can complain all day about the story itself, and people certainly have been doing that. But if a game is meant to treat you like a walking pocketbook, that's the issue I take with it. I don't think that's necessarily what they're doing here. I think the optics on it originally were misleading in that case, but it was still created as a live service game when people didn't want that. They wanted the old Arkham games because that's what they were planning on playing. From a aspect of what the game looks like, people have been putting out the comparisons there of what Harley looked like in Arkham City versus what she looks like now. I argue you can't make that comparison, particularly because it's a different art style from then. But you could definitely talk about how back in the day, Arkham City had draw distances, and you could see the city, and it was all artistically done. You could see all the different things going on. The city looks less populated now in Suicide Squad than it did in Arkham City back in the day. And here's the thing, and Saber has said this multiple times. Everybody goes, well, this is what Rocksteady did back then. There could have been a ton of turnover at Rocksteady. It could be different developers now working on new engines that have certain limitations that the old ones didn't. So you can't say that the Rocksteady now is the same Rocksteady as then. You're going to get a different product now. All that said, I agree with Alex. You don't want to see games on IPs you love fail. But unfortunately, this is one that it just doesn't look like it was hitting the marks to reach mass population the way they wanted. Same thing as everybody's going off in chat about the Avengers. The Avengers came out, it was like the Kmart Avengers compared to what you've been dealing with in the movies for years. Everybody wanted the movie Avengers. And unfortunately, Square Enix couldn't pull it together to be able to give them a product people wanted. And I think the same thing happened here with Suicide Squad.
And that's an important point to make, because when I go to Yield, I'm going to point that out, is that, you know, Tricky always says that Marvel's Avengers was a good game, and they were able, when it was all said and done, to put out a pretty good product. The problem is that it got off to a bad start, and they were never able to recover, and that potentially could be the same thing we see here. Yield, according to Tricky, they are planning 12 seasons for Suicide Squad. You know, we know, you know, you haven't played the game, I haven't played the game, Matt hasn't played the game, so we don't know the quality. Tricky says he's having fun with it, but knowing that they're planning 12 seasons, like, what do you think the outlook for this game is? Because with Warner Brothers saying, you know, it's disappointing already, what is really the incentive for them to continue, you know, investing in the game if the numbers continue to fall as far as the player base goes? Because I saw what dropped under a certain mark. I want to say 1 million. There were fewer than 1 million people playing on Steam or something like that. I don't remember the exact number, but the player base is falling and the scores aren't good for it.
If it makes 3 seasons, that will be a success. Like I said, I checked out after the state of play. I wasn't overly excited when this game was announced, because you have characters that I don't care for, other than Harley, and I am not enthusiastical behind Harley as I am with everybody else. You know, to me, Harley is a side person. She's a very important side person, but she's not good enough to carry the game herself, in my opinion. And so I was like, okay, well, you don't have a lot of people that I care about, you know, but it's made by Rocksteady, so it still should be good. And that's what I was holding on to. We come out with the state of play, and they're all jumping around, and they're climbing buildings, and they're flying, and it's like, nope, I'm done. I mean, I was even watching Tricky play it last week while we were recording, and I'm just like, it might be fun to play, but watching him play a little bit while we were recording, I have no desire to play this game, because the running up the side of a building the way they were, I'm like, you're not superhuman, you're a super villain, so to speak. And so I'm just like, no, that's why the Arkham games were so good, because they were kind of grounded in the Batman universe, not some made-up universe, it felt like. And so, yeah, no desire to play it. If they do 3 seasons, it's a success to me.
And I don't know, maybe Tricky's in chat. He's producing the show in the background. Maybe he can tell us. But how long does a season last, Tricky? Just curious. Because, you know, all we have, at least for, you know, the rest of us who haven't played it, is other games that have, you know, similar battle style passes. You know, like for Rocket League, it's 3 months. So that's kind of, you know, by comparison, all we have to go on. And Tricky says he doesn't know. So, okay.
I think you're going to run into, sorry to jump in, but I think you're going to run into the same thing that happened on the Avengers. They had all this DLC and all these post-game plans ready to launch, and then it took them forever to get the first DLC out. Then it took them forever to get the second DLC out, because they were too busy fixing all the things that they did wrong with the launch and that what people didn't want. So now you're going to see this in Suicide Squad. I think you're going to start seeing delays on some of this stuff. And eventually they're just going to say, all right, it's not worth the effort or time or money to put into it. And it's going to die off a lot sooner than they anticipated.
Yeah, the similarities to Marvel's Avengers, just with DC, instead of Marvel heroes being DC villains, is kind of scary, because Tricky, you know, notes here in the chat that each season is going to bring a new villain. With the DLCs for Marvel's Avengers, they brought in new heroes. So there are some eerie similarities between these two games. You know, Joker is the first villain they added, and then Tricky says Mr. Freeze is next. Honestly, I rag on the Suicide Squad because, you know, if you're wallpapering a room and you have scraps you just throw on the floor because it's leftovers, or like gift wrap you're doing during the holidays and you got scraps left over you're just going to throw in the trash, it's kind of what the Suicide Squad is. They're not the serious villains. They're kind of the joke villains who, you know, have somehow, some way wriggled their way into people's hearts and have kind of, become, gained some, not just infamy, but more popularity than I think they really deserve. But how much better would a game featuring DC villains be if it was just like mainline Batman villains? I think we talked about, like Clayface or something like that. Mr. Freeze would be so much more fun to play as, I would assume, than Captain Boomerang. I saw Jeremy Englehart in the chat earlier today on Facebook saying he doesn't like playing as Captain Boomerang. It seems like there's so many better Batman or DC villains they could have picked, but now they're adding them in later. And who knows? I mean, after a rough launch and players declining, it may be too late to save this game, no matter who you add in.
I'll say this, and the chat's going wild with this because Saber's saying you don't need to worry about a game that made you need to worry about the game that made you $1 billion, and that's Hogwarts Legacy. And Red Rib Rick says, Rocksteady wanted to make a good game, the studio fucked them over, and that it's Harley and the C Team. But absolutely. You talk about putting in Mr. Freeze and Joker and all these Batman villains. Did anybody expect Brainiac to look the way he does? I mean, is there a reason he looks like an alien when traditionally he's been shown as kind of like a super smart cyborg? No, Tricky, he does not look awesome. He looks like something.
Does he look like one of the Mars Attacks aliens? I haven't seen pictures of him.
No, because he doesn't have a giant like exposed brain, but it's like he looks like Voldemort. I think was the closest comparison because he doesn't have a nose.
You can't say that name, Matt. You've got to be careful with saying that name.
I can say his name is Voldemort. Is a villain. I don't have a follow-up joke to that. It's just I don't live in the Harry Potter world. The issue is Brainiac just doesn't look good in my opinion. I think the characters, Harley, King Shark, Boomerang, and Deadshot, I think they look fine. I think they did a better job making them look like their characters compared to what Square Enix did with the Avengers. All the Avengers, like I said, look like Kmart Avengers. But the issue I have is that these villains just kind of look meh. And I know the focus was the Justice League, who were the quote-unquote villains in this case. So I think they made them look as good as they can. It's just the gameplay itself is just not as entertaining.
Brainiac looks like a Mortal Kombat character.
He looks horrible in my opinion.
He definitely looks overpowered.
Yeah, that doesn't look awesome.
You know how everybody complained about how cheap Shao Kahn was in Mortal Kombat as a final boss? Well, Brainiac here in this picture looks like he could give him a run for his money. I'll say that much. Thank you, Tricky, for sharing that screen. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there's potentially too much negativity around the game, despite the fact that people are having fun with it. Tricky likes it. He said he would defend it. It's just there seems to be a swirl of negativity around it, and people have kind of passed it by, and you don't really get a chance to get people back. Even if you deep discount the game, and you add in new characters, it may be past the point of no return for this game. I mean, people, there's so much to play, so much entertainment thrown at us constantly that you get a chance, and if you miss it, you're done. So we'll have to see. Like I said, none of us wish ill of this game. It's just none of us have had a great opinion of it from day one. Not saying that we're scoring the game poorly, but it certainly when voting with our wallets, with our our money, it certainly didn't do enough to draw us in. So that's definitely not a good sign. And with the player base falling, I don't know. There's just not a lot of great signs out there for this game. Do we have? This is a good time now, Matt, to do our community related stuff, questions. Tricky, do you want to trigger that audio thing you like to do? Lion King rip off there.
Time to check my social media, yeah.
I just had to pet my cat Cosmo there. He's sitting there looking for pets. It makes me feel a little bit more alive, a little bit more Lion King-y there when I'm petting our little feline there. Cosmo, you're not on the show, buddy.
The good news is, folks, whenever I edit, I turn that sound way down. Anyways,
How are people supposed to know how lame we are if you turn it down?
They just listen to the show. Oh man,
hey,
soft
cool.
burns are the
we're
best. So listener questions come back. Or I'm sorry, splitting between a couple things. As I'm trying to read the listener questions, pop-ups are coming up on Facebook. Redbeard Rick's asking why I hate Matt because it's a lame song. Redbeard Rick. No, it is not a good soundbite. We can agree to disagree. T Diddy comes in this week with a couple questions. Should Transformers have a musical specific to Generation 1? No, Thomas.
No.
They should not.
No.
I wouldn't mind hearing Frank Welker and Peter Cullen trying to sing, but no, definitely not.
Here's the thing, though. You get... It's not quite the depth of the Magneto Professor X friendship, their relationship they have, the history they have, but they're being Cybertronians, you do catch from time to time, Optimus being good, Megatron being evil. There is a history there, where they at one point were considered brothers and then they went their separate ways. I don't know. That could make for some good on-stage drama there, Matt. What if there was like a solo or like an expanded role for Soundwave? I hit you with the Soundwave. You seem like you're mildly enticed right now.
The silence should tell you all you need to know about that.
What if it was 75% Soundwave?
I might actually have a problem.
Whoa, whoa. That would be almost like not quite listening to techno, but that would be, I don't know how that would sound. Soundwave singing.
Moving on.
Honestly,
yes,
I don't know what sounds worse, a live action Thundercats or a Transformers musical. Probably the live action Thundercats.
Transformers musical.
You want to see some real humans dressed up as furries run around in unitards and leotards?
Well, to be honest with you, I wouldn't watch either of them, but
I mean, here's the thing.
I mean, they made cats.
They have the Broadway play and they tried the movie.
Did the movie work?
No, but the musical.
There's my point.
The Cats musical. Why am I hating? That's back to that one. Okay, moving on. Next question. With Final Fantasy Rebirth coming out, will it automatically win Game of the Year for being the most ambitious game?
Well, it's kind of hard to... I mean, this is obviously a question we can answer more easily in hindsight, knowing what comes out this year. I mean... I don't know. We'll have to see when it comes out, what the feedback is. I don't play Final Fantasy games, so I don't know.
I don't know. Helldivers 2 is my game of the year right now.
Well, I mean, they're specifically most ambitious game. I mean, I don't necessarily know. With the server issues they had, I don't know. I mean, yeah, Helldivers went from one perspective to a third-person perspective, and they changed the game up to, translate it to the PlayStation 5. But I don't know. Most ambitious game... I don't know. They didn't seem, and no one could blame them for not being prepared for the server crush that they had. But hey,
I don't know. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Ain't that part 2 of Final Fantasy VII?
Yeah. I mean, after the comment that from somebody from Square Enix that it would take 20 years to remake Final Fantasy VI, I don't know. Maybe they just take these things more seriously than we think they do.
I don't know. I think you're drawing out. I mean. I need to talk to my brother about it. I think the last time I talked to him about it, he thinks it's taking way too long. I mean, Final Fantasy VII is like the best game, in his opinion, of the series. And so it's just, even I feel that they're taking their sweet time doing this. And I don't think I feel from those who like the game, they are reaping the rewards of taking this long to take a beloved game of the franchise and their kind of terms, milk it out into 3 separate games.
I think there's kind of in this situation, you could use, potentially look at it as maybe ambitious or maybe foolish because, look, taking care of a property as important as, or a game as important as Final Fantasy VII is definitely, you need, if people are going to wait that long for a remake, absolutely do your best with it. Take care of it. But with how long it's taken to come out, I don't know. Maybe they've put more effort into it than they should have. I mean, we've seen quality remakes come out, in much less time rather than breaking it up and over the course of years and years. So I don't know. I mean, potentially ambitious, but also maybe Square Enix is just taking it, like Yield said, milking it more than they should. I don't know. Your thoughts, Matt?
I think with what they were doing, with how people were fiending for a Final Fantasy game, especially the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I should say, I think the scope crept up on them. And frankly, if the goal was to release a full Final Fantasy remake with all of the game intact, the fact is we still wouldn't have it to this day. And people would freaking riot because it would have been advertised and it still wouldn't be out. So I think breaking it up gave them that credibility that what they were doing was what the crowd wanted. So I'm actually okay with them breaking it up, not necessarily because I agree with that method. I don't think, they're making 3 times worth the game for the same price. I think the quantity of stuff you're getting in the game is worthwhile. And frankly, for a game that's being remade, I was able to wait until Final Fantasy Remake was on sale for $20, and I saved myself some money in the end. So I'm okay. Maybe I'll pick up Rebirth at some point. Maybe I'll try playing all of them again because I gave up on Remake at one point.
And, like I said, we still don't know a lot of what's coming out this year, but Sony's not going to have any of their existing, franchises come out this year. Microsoft doesn't look like they're going to have, they've not announced anything big as far as I know. Like there's not like a Halo or a new Gears of War coming out that I know of. And a lot of, last year we had Super Mario Wonder and Legend of Zelda. So a lot of, this may be one of those years where it's a little bit more quiet, whereas last year was more packed. So, I mean, could Final Fantasy VII Rebirth be the most ambitious game out there? I mean, it could be. We'll just kind of have to see once everything comes out.
Darth Knight in the chat agrees. Alex and Yield Helldivers game of the year so far.
Yes.
Next question. With Tricky down, is anyone taking up smoking in his place? I have always been smoking, Thomas. Just not the way that Tricky does. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I did a rack of ribs. I did a rack of ribs on my smoker.
I thought I picked that up. We've actually been trying to get Tricky to stop smoking, but he won't do it. He refuses. So
yeah, it's not working.
Even after oral surgery, he's like, "No, I'm going to do it."
And then the final question is, what is the indie game that you currently want that you haven't bought or that people are sleeping on?
So, I don't know if people are sleeping on it. I want Dave the Diver. And another game that I want that I don't know if I'll ever see is Valley of the Gods, which I know a lot of you are like, what? But it's being done by Campo Santo.
Oh, okay.
If they're still around, I know it'll probably be primarily PC. I hope that it would make its way to console. But after I played Firewatch and they announced Valley of the Gods, I was like, ooh, gimme. And then it's gone quiet for a very, very long time. So I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day, but that's a game that I would be excited to play.
Alex?
For me, I am excited to play Dave the Diver, but I'll go in a different direction. Games that were previously released that I had in my cart but didn't quite go through with the purchase. Dredge being one of those games, and also Carrion, another one of those games where you assume the role of a monster in, like, I think an Arctic station. Basically you are the creature and you're out there killing everybody. 2 games that I've kind of had on my radar and just kind of never got around to playing, but it would actually, be kind of nice to knock one of those off my list. So maybe one of those 2 games I'll get taken care of this year.
Okay. There's actually 2 games I want to touch real quick. One is because Rick says he needs a movie maker simulator to come out on PS. There's a game actually on Switch called Rift Tracks. where it takes old B movie roles, and it's a party game, kind of like Jackbox Party Packs, where it'll play you a scene and everybody has to put in their one-liner, and then it plays it over, and obviously everybody votes on the best one-liner. So that's number one. Number two, there's a game I play on PC that I really wish would come out to PlayStation. It's a lot of fun, called Ultimate Chicken Horse. It's up to 4 players, and your goal is to get your character from one side of the map to the other. And to do that, each player gets to choose things like platforms or traps or other things that would kill your opponents that hopefully you can avoid to complete the map. So, and Rick says Chicken Horse is on PS4. Excellent. So go out there and buy that and play it with your friends. It is a lot of freaking fun, and it's some of the most fun I've had on some indie games. And that is it for our community questions. Thank you, everybody, for writing in.
Yes, thank you all for the questions. Ready to move on to topic of the week?
Let's move on to topic of the week.
All right. This is a big topic, and it kind of, there's been a lot of scuttlebutt and rumor around Xbox. There still would be Xbox exclusives, so don't go putting engraving a tombstone for Microsoft and the Xbox just yet. But they did announce that we are getting some of their exclusive games on the PS5. One of those games being Sea of Thieves, a favorite of friend of the show Jeff Hanna. The article is written by Alex Stedman at IGN. Sea of Thieves coming to PlayStation 5 in April as Xbox confirms the 4 exclusives headed to other platforms. Recent confirmations fulfilled the promise of the recent Xbox podcast where Phil Spencer announced 4 of their previously exclusive games would be coming to other consoles. Sea of Thieves will be coming to the PS5 on April 30th and will support crossplay. In addition,
probably a day one purchase for me.
Which is big for a man who also, seems to be somewhat invested in Sea of Thieves. I mean, you can always try out both and maybe play both, or do you think at that point you'll choose one or the other?
I'll probably still play through Skull and Bones because I'll probably be determined to get the platinum if it's achievable. But I've wanted to play Sea of Thieves since it was announced. So now that I don't have to go buy another console or wait for Microsoft to put out games on the Xbox, more than 1 or 2 that I really want to play, I'm excited for that.
And Tricky has a question in the chat that I'll get to after we finish the news here. But in addition, Pentiment will be coming to the PS5 and 4 as well as the Switch on February 22nd. Hi-Fi Rush will arrive on the PS5 on March 19th, while Grounded will come to the PS5 and the 4 and Switch on April 16th. Xbox exclusives, not quite Gears of War or anything like that, no Forza. So Microsoft obviously has certain games they are going to keep to themselves, but also they have a ton of studios. So, even if they give up a few of their console exclusives, they still have other big games made by, say, Bethesda or Activision that they can always,
Indiana Jones
keep to Game Pass and the PC and be just fine. But obviously, Sea of Thieves is the big game out of this. I mean, Hi-Fi Rush has gotten a lot of positive press, so don't sleep on that. But, I mean, really, Sea of Thieves is kind of the headliner here. And Tricky wanted to know what we think the game will cost. Sea of Thieves, I don't know. Is it the typical model? Is there an MSRP on Xbox? I did not look this up because Tricky just asked this question, but I would assume Tricky says he thinks $30 to $40.
I was gonna say 40. The game's been out a really long time. I don't see them charging full Emmett. I think originally it was 60. I just don't see them charging that.
On Steam right now, it's $40.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if it's on Steam for $40, I would assume that you would see something similar on the PlayStation 5. I don't think they're going to release games on PlayStation 5 and just jack up the price. Like I said, their biggest games, Halos and stuff, they're not going to put on the 5, at least, nowhere in the future. But some of the smaller games they have, released at a more budget-friendly price. And especially with Sea of Thieves, being out for a while and this being a way to kind of boost the player base. Not saying that it's, small or anything like that, but, get an influx of PlayStation players supporting crossplay is a good way to help the community thrive even more. So, yeah, I mean, $40 would seem to be a fair price and what they would logically go with, as far as charging across all platforms. I don't think they're going to, out of spite, just bring these games to PS5 and then charge double. So, I mean, $40, would seem to be a safe bet. We all kind of agree with that?
Yeah.
And, so we had a lot of rumors swirling, and as usual on the internet, a lot of those rumors were, made out to be, bigger than the news we actually got. But, what do you guys look at this news as? Do you think it's a positive for both Sony and Microsoft? Do you think this is a good thing? Is it gloom and doom? People were, writing the obituaries for the Xbox, in the days or weeks leading up to this announcement. In hindsight, how do you view all this, Matt?
I got a twisted sense of satisfaction out of everything when the announcement came out. And I'll tell you why. Because first off, you had news outlets coming out saying, "Oh, Xbox is in trouble. They're going to be announcing some of their exclusives coming to PlayStation and Switch, and you're going to get Gears of War and Starfield and blah 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 and this and that." And then that naturally started the conversation of, well, does this mean Xbox is going away? Are they stopping hardware? They're going to pull a Sega, shades of Sega, blah, the Sega this, blah. And the announcement was, hey, we're looking at the way to do things. We're going to be bringing out 4 titles. We're not going to tell you today. The developers of those games are going to tell you when. And all of that was preceded by an announcement from Phil Spencer being like, hey, we hear you. There's an announcement we have next Thursday. Listen to the Xbox podcast. I laughed my ass off at everybody who was pre-announcing the death of Microsoft's Xbox and everybody who was making these wild predictions with absolutely no backing whatsoever. I realize and I acknowledge Xbox is not in a good marketplace right now. And the amount of people hating on it just because it's the cool thing to do is annoying, to say the least. Daryl from Loop Rose always talks about how much he doesn't want Xbox to fail, because you need that marketplace where there's competitors to drive innovation, to drive games. And thanks for interrupting my thought, Tricky. Tricky comes in and says, to be fair, Microsoft put out image changing the name of Game Pass to Microsoft Game Pass, taking the Xbox name away. They've done that with titles in the past. Everybody was flipping the fuck out when it happened to a game, when it was done on Horizon years ago. So it's nothing new. They were taking things out of context left and right. So yes, I laugh at everybody who was saying that Xbox was dying and that they're going third party, because you make these accusations, you make these predictions. People are putting out saying, here's all the games Microsoft's going to announce coming over to PlayStation. Haha. See, that's what Microsoft has to do. And Microsoft came out and said, no. So the wild accusations have to stop. The wild predictions without factual backing have to stop. You can have talks about it. You can discuss what you may want to see. But then people claiming that Microsoft is dead or Xbox is dead and that they're going away. Well, how about you put some facts behind that? What's your thought? Just because you think that they're doing bad, you don't know what the financials are behind the scenes. Everybody's out there predicting how they're losing money on Game Pass. And I ask every single person, what's your financial background to say that? What is your expert opinion to say that that's true? Well, just think about it. It's the money. It doesn't make sense. Okay, thanks. Moving on to the actual people who are working on it. Microsoft, what's your comment? Because you can speculate all day, but until you actually have real, actionable information, your opinion is just an opinion, and it doesn't ultimately matter.
So I think that Microsoft, if anyone thought that Microsoft was really going to give up a foothold in the video game business, video games are too much money. They make too much money for Microsoft to really kind of give ground to the other big competitors they have. I mean, really, they're just competing against Sony. Nintendo is a competitor of some sort because, again, it does take money to buy their games. You have to have time to play them, and that does take away money and time that you could be spending on other platforms. But really, their main competitor is Sony. And Microsoft has been successful in entering the video game market and making money and staying strong in a market that typically people try to get into and fail miserably. So the idea that Microsoft is going to cede any is going to kind of, I guess everyone I had no idea where they were going with this. I saw all the rumors and stuff, and I only put so much stock into rumors and what I read on the internet. But even I was like, what are they going to do here? We know they have a business plan. We know they're moving more towards digital. They don't want to deal with physical as much, But I think that video games are too important to tech companies, and they make too much money from Microsoft to really voluntarily step away, because they don't really need to step away at all. They make enough money as a company, as you can see from them buying Activision for how much they bought them for, that they're not really hurting. So they don't really have to give way. They were just kind of ahead of a step or two ahead of Sony when it comes to this kind of thing. Sony's bringing their games to the PC market, which Microsoft did a long time ago. So them giving Sony some of their games and not really any of their big games, Sea of Thieves being their most landmark game of those four, isn't really a big deal, and everyone made more of a mountain out of this molehill than there ever really was in the first place. Yield, I'm going to ask you about a comment that Tricky made in our chat here. He said, not trolling, but I think this is Microsoft trying to bring in revenue without them making money off of Game Pass, which I read as they are, yes, they're using these games and their other games to bring people to Game Pass so that they're locked in for a subscription for however many years. And, some people who have Game Pass may not see a need to buy these games outside of spending money on their subscription. But by bringing these games to PlayStation, they can then make extra revenue off of them because Game Pass is not available on PlayStation. And if you want to play it on PlayStation, you have to buy them. What do you think of Tricky's, theory there? And what's your thought on how everything turned out overall as far as Microsoft's announcements?
Well, I mean, of course they're putting it out there for more revenue. As for to counter not making money on Game Pass, we haven't really heard anything that says they're not making money on Game Pass. We all assume they're not making money on Game Pass because it doesn't make sense to us necessarily, but we haven't really seen anything that says they're not making money. We've heard some devs throw out that they believe they're not making any money, but yet that seems to be a dev that was slighted by Microsoft to some extent. So is that the truth or just somebody who was upset? So I think it is for more revenue. I think maybe Microsoft is just testing the waters, because the only real game that everybody knows is Sea of Thieves. The other games I've never heard of. I watched the trailer for Hi-Fi Rush on the PlayStation Store, and it didn't even do anything to entice me to look up the game anymore. I was just like, okay. So, if this does well, you could see more. And it's interesting to think of why Microsoft is now doing this. I mean, I speculated maybe they are wanting to get out of the console business, but Phil came out and said, no, we're not getting out of the console business. He reassured his loyalists is the wrong term, but he reassured his loyalist fan base that no, we're not leaving, Xbox. So I'm still doing a wait and see sort of thing. Are we going to get anything else? Is this the olive branch, so to speak, of Microsoft going, look, all right, we're willing to put our games on your console. Are you willing to put some of your games on our console? So you could go anywhere with this, really.
Yield, I actually have a specific thought on that point you just raised there. Matt, I'll go to you for closing comments after this. But because of Game Pass, I think that Sony's exclusives are a lot more important to Sony than Microsoft's are to Microsoft. I mean, sure, absolutely. Microsoft doesn't want to put Halo on PS5, and I totally understand that. But because of the marketing tool and the enticement that, is Game Pass. Microsoft giving Sony some of their smaller exclusives isn't as big of a deal as if Sony turned around and gave 4 games to Microsoft. So I think Sony, obviously, with some business in the cloud, but not as much as Microsoft, they're still more reliant on the PS5 than I really think that Microsoft is on the X and S, obviously because of how many ways you can access Game Pass. It'd be a much more landmark news if Sony were to turn around and be like, oh yeah, hey, we'll give you 4 of our exclusives. I don't think Sony can take that hit as well as Microsoft can. Matt, any extra thoughts?
Yeah, and this is to address Tricky's question, because this is the thing people ask all the time, is the issue with Game Pass is they are making money, but people outside looking in don't see how. How do you spend 10 to 20 million making a game, release it for free, and make money on it? How do you get a return on the investment? And I don't know if this is Tricky asking the question or he's just phrasing the question that other people ask. They are not releasing it for free.
No, you paid for Game Pass.
You're paying for Game Pass. They are getting residuals.
It's like the free games we get for PlayStation Plus.
It's you either get residuals on it for years to come. So I'll probably, again, this is speculation, but this is how I would do it from a business mindset. If you are a first-party studio for Game Pass, you are getting residuals on that every month because your game remains on the service. If you are a third-party game, you get a lump sum, which guarantees you a certain amount of sales and potentially residuals on it every month your game is on Game Pass. And from there, the second your game drops off Game Pass, you stop getting those residuals. You have actors and actresses getting residual checks for shows they did decades ago. There's no reason to say that isn't the same way that a business does with Game Pass now. So you're not releasing your game for free. You're getting a cut of that pie. And with the way that Microsoft said that they had 33 million users, some of those maybe at the $1 tier, many of them at the $18 tier, there's money to go around. And Microsoft has enough money in its other operating businesses and other operating business units that they can share losses and profits across their organization to make something that maybe not profitable on the outside work. I say it this way. I used to work for a big box chain store. We dropped our box chain stores next to other competitors to take market share from them, regardless if that store was losing money or not, because our other profitable stores were helping support the losses that store was sustaining to give our competitors losses. So, Tricky, how do you get a return on the investment? By having people subscribe to your service. Like, it's as simple as that. There's no other way to explain it to make people understand that you get a cut of the pie when people are on Game Pass, when your game is on Game Pass. And then that assures you a monthly income that you use to support your business.
Yeah, it's a more constant flow of income as opposed to spending money on a game and then waiting for that money to come back after you have released the game. Matt, you're typing to Tricky. Has he said anything to trigger you?
No, because Red Beer Rick, we're going to hell for this one. He says Friends Cast make $20 million a year for each from residuals. Maybe $25 million now with Matthew Perry being dead.
Oh,
I'm going to leave that in the show. I'm editing. I'm going to leave that in the show. And if we end up in...
Tricky says he wants to yell at me. Yeah, you can type furiously in chat. I don't care. But everything else is speculation.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Tricky is the one... He sat there and said he wanted to defend Suicide Squad, and we were talking shit on it. He's the one that put the article... a very negative article when it comes to Suicide Squad, with Warner Brothers saying it was a disappointment when it comes to sales. He's the one that put that in the agenda. So I don't understand what we did wrong. I don't know. Tricky's just looking to start fights for no reason at all.
Oh, I think it's the whole Microsoft, the whole Game Pass thing is what he's
No, that's exactly it. And you can't convince me otherwise that people are taking a loss. And if you're taking a loss, okay, step back for a second, because he talks about being an equal opportunity reporter. Yes, there's companies that take losses, and I just explained that in my previous work experience, that you take a loss to gain market share. And that is a viable business option if you have other divisions or other stores that can support that loss by generating a profit. Microsoft can do that because here's Sony in entertainment and Sony in DVDs and hardware sales and movie things. Microsoft is much larger than that. Therefore, they can support losses in other divisions. For them to sustain, and Rick said this earlier, to continuously sustain losses year after year. Game Pass has been in operation since 2017. You're telling me that they're taking a loss every year since then because they just want to come up with market share? There's got to be something there behind the scenes. The same way other people will speculate that, oh, Microsoft has to be taking losses behind the scenes. I'm going to speculate that they're not, because the business is still running. It's still going. And you got that report 2 weeks ago from Phil Spencer saying, no, we're not going anywhere. We're still focusing on hardware. So, yeah, I can speculate to the other end just as much as everybody else can speculate to the losses.
All right. Well, I'm sure we will wait for, I'm sure by the time Tricky's back, he will have something else to yell at us about. But yeah, I think that is going to wrap it up for that topic and really for this episode. But before we get out of here, we got to throw out some shout outs. We got to throw out some love. So Matt, how about you start us off?
Tricky, Alex Yield, thank you very much for being here tonight. This was, I think, still very good discussion. Now it got a little emotional, heated there at the end, but I still felt it was a very important topic to talk about.
I mean, I'm still pissed that you said Mario Kart Spin and Crash Bandicoot, Crash Team Racing there, Matt. If we want to talk about emotions.
Facts don't care about your feelings. Oh, dear.
Fact your feelings.
I mean it's 2-1.
And Tricky's vote doesn't count right now. Shout out to Rick. Shout out to Saber. Shout out to Neptune Princess. Shout out to Gamer Veranza.
Shout out to Ashley. She threw me under the bus.
You're going to shout out to her later, so I figured I might as well get there before you. Shout out to Darth Knight, who I saw in chat. If there's somebody else I forgot, I apologize. Shout out to the Channel 3 community. Come on over, tune into channel3.gg to gamify your social media, earn some XP, and have fun talking about games with other like-minded people. And finally, shout out to my wife, V. Thank you for doing everything you do inside and outside of the show. And have a good night, folks.
Sega! Yield, how about you, sir?
Shout out to everybody who was in chat, the Twitch chat tonight. Shout out to Alex for hosting, Tricky for producing, I guess I will say, and shout out to Matt as well. Shout out to Arrowhead. Helldivers is amazing. Give it a try if you like third-person shooters. Or if you like Starship Troopers. Shout out to the community. Everybody on the Facebook groups. Shout out to Gareth for his rarity contest. And yeah, that'll do it for me.
Want to shout out to our awesome community, the fuel to the fire of this trophy horse. Our growing community, thanks to the continued increase in views we're getting on our TikTok and YouTube channels. Official Proven Gamer, please go check it out if you're on those platforms. And yeah, the reason we keep growing and because we're still here is because of our awesome community. So thank you all very much for supporting us through thick and thin. And sickness and in health, as we've been seeing with Tricky here lately. But we hope Tricky is certainly feeling better, and we thank him for producing in the background. Shout out to Matt and to Yield for joining me tonight. And last but not least, give a shout out to my awesome and loving girlfriend, Ashley, who definitely didn't throw me under the bus earlier, and who I'm definitely not shouting out now, so she doesn't throw me under the bus next week as well. Yeah, I love you, hun. And yeah, that is going to bring an end to episode 610 of Trophy Horrors. We thank you for joining us this week. And until next week, happy trophy hunt.
See ya.
All hail Megatron.
The theme song is Venus by the band Even off their album Zenith. Permission granted by the band and 12 Stone Records. You can find them on Facebook by going to www.facebook.com/evenphilippines.